All right, thank you. I want to talk today about delivery breakthroughs in cloud, and the most logical place I thought to start was to go back to ancient Greece about 700 years before the birth of Christ. No better place to start, right? But ultimately, where I want to start this journey in terms of what breakthroughs look like is going back and looking at the first Olympiad, the stadium race. A gentleman by the name of Korobos wins the first stadium race. Now, the stadium race is essentially a foot race, measures about 600 feet in length, but ultimately becomes the signature event of the first 13 Olympiads. Now, over the next couple of centuries, the foot race is actually growing in prominence and becomes a common wager and gambling event in the United Kingdom. In 1593, British Parliament sets the mile at officially 5,280 feet. And in 1852, a gentleman by the name of Cadet Marshall sets the first world record for the mile at 4 minutes and 52 seconds. By the 1880s, though, there's a great debate that is taking place as to whether or not anyone can actually beat the sub 4 minute mark as it relates to running a mile. And that very challenge begins to inspire some of the most brilliant coaches and gifted athletes across North America, Europe, and Australia. Now, experts believe they have a really good understanding as to how the race is going to be won and what the conditions need to look like in order for that sub 4 minute mile to take place. It needs to be a perfect day, very little wind, a hard, dry clay track, and it needs to be in front of a very large crowd of people. But over the course of the next couple of decades, as runners try to beat the 4 minute mark, they're continually beaten back. And ultimately, the 4 minute number becomes as much of a psychological barrier as a physical one. But on May 6, 1954, a young 25-year-old medical student from Oxford, England, by the name of Roger Bannister, achieves the previously unthinkable and eclipses the 4 minute mark. And despite expert opinions on ideal conditions, he does it on a cold, dreary day on a soft and damp track. But most importantly, the physical barrier and the psychological barrier have been broken. In fact, just 46 days later, on June 21st, 1954, a gentleman by the name of John Landry in Australia not only runs it a mile race in under 4 minutes, he actually beats Bannister's mark and does it a second faster. Then a year later, 3 runners break the 4 minute mark in the same race. At Solstice, we believe that we've cracked the code to enable organizations to reach similar summits of glory and to dispel some of the barriers that have been standing in their way. I lead our cloud modernization practice, and the formula that we see playing out to be most successful is as follows. The first, and we'll hear about this a little bit later today, cloud-native architectures, decomposing existing systems, taking advantage of new technologies, patterns, and practices in order to move faster. Then, a new DevOps-related mindset, a shared set of responsibilities, as well as new common goals for developers and IT operations to work in unison. And then lastly, a modern platform, a rerouting of traditional investments, what we would call below the platform, below the value line, that is happening or has happened over the course of the last couple of decades in terms of managing infrastructure, patching infrastructure, rerouting all of that investment up above the platform into the apps and features that are being delivered and value that's being placed in your customers' hands. And then lastly, you can't see it here, but we feel like we've got a really unique approach as how we approach modern delivery in a practice that we call FlexP delivery. And that's really taking the best of what Agile XP has provided us in a modernization setting and borrowing some of the key tenets that we've seen to be very successful as it relates to Scrum over the last 20 years. Now, as we move forward and as we move faster, the barriers will continue to fall. And as we heard this morning in Kelly's keynote, Ella Kajog, the most accomplished long-distance runner in our lifetime, ran the first sub 2-hour marathon. And not only is this important, it shows us that anything is possible. That speed is not only important when it comes to long-distance running and software delivery, but it's the evolutionary fabric of the world that we live today. And no better way to bring that point together by circling back to Sir Roger Bannister himself and highlighting one of his famous quotes. Every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. It knows that it needs to move faster than the lion or it will not survive. Every morning, a lion wakes up and knows that it needs to move faster than a gazelle or it will starve. It doesn't matter if you're a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better be moving.